Hey guys, how the hell are you? It has been a hot minute since we've done a legit iFAQ video, so welcome back to iFAQ number 20 in this series. The series where you guys ask me the burning questions that you really hope I have an opinion on. So with that, let's cut straight through the bullshit and get to the bullshit. First question, what's up boss? Love the channel. Question for the next iFAQ. How would you rank the big four? I'm hoping your answer helps settle an argument. Okay, so this is actually a great question, and I haven't really given this a lot of thought up until this point. The big four to me are four awesome thrash metal bands that I kind of grew up listening to. Granted, I didn't grow up during the heyday of them, which was arguably the late 80s. I got into thrash metal in like the early to mid 90s. You know, I got into all of these bands that are part of the big four: Anthrax, Slayer, Megadeth, and of course Metallica. I definitely do have an opinion, but the problem with ranking all four of these bands is, number one, the impact that all four of these bands have had has been immense. It's been monstrous, and to try to say that any one is better than the other is a little bit of a daunting challenge, especially when you really get into like the top. The other problem that you have is that arguably all of these bands have put out some rather crap records. Yes, including Slayer. And so with all that in mind, it starts to get to a point of like, okay, how do I quantify all these different bands? And it's really tough, and I'm going to have to put the order at this in terms of from least to greatest, and I'm going to explain why. Number 4 would be Anthrax, and the reason why number 4 would be Anthrax is because for whatever reason, most of their material has just not resonated with me. Like, I love the first record with John Bush. Sound of White Noise is fantastic. I love the last couple records with Joey before he left. I love State of Euphoria. I love Persistence of Time. I think that those records are fantastic. I am very much in the thrash metal minority in that I honestly don't really like a lot of the super old stuff, and I definitely don't like a lot of the more recent stuff. Their place in metal history is definitely not up for debate. I think they're an amazing band and they've put out some incredible material. It's just never really hit me the way that the others have. The next band on the list, I'm gonna say, is Slayer. And the reason why Slayer is number 3 for me instead of higher is because, for kind of the same reason as with Anthrax, but to a different extent. With Slayer, like Henry Rollins said it best, Slayer is sticking to their story. Every record that they put out, it's like someone puts them in a block of ice, chips them out, and says, hey guys, it's still 1981, go. And granted, their sound has matured. That's a bit of an exaggeration on Hank's part, but we're talking about a band that has retained their basic core sound throughout their entire career and has only deviated a little bit here or there from that core sound. Has matured a little bit musically, has regressed a little bit musically. A record like Diabolus and Musica, you know, I can't really stand that record. But like taking a listen to records that came after that one and records that came before that one, I think are all fantastic for a number of reasons. I love, of course, a lot of the classic material: War Ensemble, Rain and Blood, Angel of Death, Hell Awaits, etc. Chemical Warfare, Captor of Sin. But, you know, I think it's one of those things where they've retained so much of their core sound and have not really strayed too far from the path to the point where it doesn't hold my interest as much as the next two bands did. That's not to say that Slayer is a bad band by any fucking stretch, because I absolutely love Slayer, and I really hate how people in like all the little forums make fun of them. Oh, it's Slayer. Oh, that's their fucking riffs. Dude, it's fucking awesome to hear those riffs, so shut the fuck up. But number 2 would be Megadeth, because fucking Mustaine has always been a lord of the riff, and even though they have put out some garbage records like Risk, I think that that's just a mark of a band being a band. They put out some spotty material here and there, but then they redeem themselves with some amazing stuff. You know, I even love a lot of the more recent stuff. Like, nobody ever talks about Endgame. Endgame was a fucking phenomenal record. Especially like, you know, that first, not the intro instrumental, but the very first song on that record was just blistering, and that was Megadeth at their finest. They still very much have it. They've never really lost it. They've just kind of dipped their toe into pools that they really shouldn't be dipping into so much every so often. Also, they need to always have a mix engineer in their court who has their best interests at heart. So someone like an Andy Sneap. I also have another opinion about Megadeth too. Dave, you should have never ever re-recorded any of the rhythm guitar parts for those first few albums, because So Far So Good, So What especially was fucking perfection in my opinion, and you fucking ruined it. Number 1 for me is Metallica, and that's just because of the lasting impact that they've had on me. Yeah, they've put out some garbage in recent years. They've also come back a little bit, and a lot of like more recent stuff like Hardwired to Self-Destruct, there's a lot of awesome kick-ass thrash on that record. Is it a classic by any means, up there with the old school stuff? No, but are they still a band that can fucking kick ass when they want to? Hell yes, they are. And for my money, and I know this is definitely in the minority, the Black Album is a fucking incredible record. People give it way too much hate. People say, oh, that's when they started to suck. No, and the reason why I'm going to say so is because that is also the top-selling record of the SoundScan era. Flat out, you cannot deny them that fact. It is something that has sold well past 15 million copies. What is it at, like 16, 17 million now? That is a fucking phenomenal record, and people shit on it all the time. It's got some incredible fucking metal material on it. I don't know, it just bums me out that people always shit on that record. But yeah, so there you go. There's my ranking. Metallica number 1, Megadeth number 2, Slayer number 3, Anthrax number 4. Here's one. Do you feel that demoing and reviewing all the instruments that you do has improved your guitar skills at all? To a certain extent, I mean, if anything, it's just kept me focused and given me a sort of purpose to keep playing, because I have a very short attention span and it's very, very tough for me to stay motivated, especially these days when I've got so much going on in my life outside of music. So being able to do these videos just kind of keeps me with a guitar in my hand all the time. It basically keeps me up to practice more than anything. Thanks for being you, dude. You have actually helped sparking my guitar playing again. Hey, thanks, bro. Next iFAQ. What is your take on the use of exotic wood types that are endangered or getting closer to the endangered list for guitars and instruments? Buying an old guitar with an exotic wood type does not count because you are not increasing the demand directly. I think that people are starting to pay too much attention to exotic wood types lately. I think that it doesn't really affect the tone nearly as much as people are making it out to be. They just want something that looks cool, and I don't really go for that so much. I think, you know, there's a reason why so many guitars have been made over the years using a rather small selection of woods. Alder, ash, swamp ash, mahogany of different types, rosewood of different types. It's because these woods have worked so well. Granted, it's cool when a builder tries something different to see if it gets a different result, but most of the time, doesn't really. So, at least in my opinion. Or if it does get a different result, it's a different result that sounds weird or that kills the vibe of like maybe the pickups or maybe of a different wood that it's interacting with on the instrument. So I don't necessarily give too much a shit about exotic wood types. I want something that plays awesome and I want something that sounds awesome. So I've kind of learned my lesson the hard way on that a little bit. So I am gonna just kind of stick to the stuff that I know here going forward myself whenever I order a custom instrument. I think that if anything, what we need to do is we need to put more research and also a lot more accountability into sustainable like forestation, like replanting, so that way we have more of this material going forward for use later on. I also am of the opinion that we need to not be so quick to always buy the latest and greatest thing. I know that sucks coming from me, a gear reviewer, but maybe what we need to do is go back into the pawn shops and see if we can find those hidden treasures and resurrect them. You know, breathe new life into them, polish them up, fix the problems that exist with them, and play those. So that way those are still in use, those still have forever homes, and those are still finding loving hands with which to play them. Hey Arnold, love the videos. What are your favorite instrumental metal rock bands? So to be straight up honest with you, I hate instrumental rock and metal. Instrumental music is not necessarily something I get into so much. I dig, of course, jazz, I dig classical, but instrumental rock and metal, to me, sounds like a lot of pointless, needless wankery. I just can't get into it. God help me, I've tried. Man, you know, like I used to be all about really, really cool instrumental tracks on albums, but then the more I would listen to them, the more I would be like, you know, this is kind of boring and tedious to listen to this. I want lyrics, I want a vocal melody to just sort of carry over everything. You know, I don't really even pay attention to the lyrics so much, I just want something there to kind of counteract everything that's happening underneath it. So, like, I don't really go for a lot of instrumental rock and metal. I don't dig a lot of this newer prog that keeps coming out. If anything could be called my favorite instrumental rock or metal band, I would say Animals as Leaders, and the only reason why I'm even saying that is because of a handful of songs here or there. So it's not necessarily something I go for, usually. Would you ever play a Strat? Funny you should mention, actually. So I recently just picked this up. This is one of my white whales I've been after for a while. I've been looking for a birth year Strat. My problem that I've mentioned in a few other videos and also in like some live streams recently is that 1983 is my birth year, and that is one of the arguably worst years for Fender. If you don't believe me, look up Two Knob Strat and see what atrocities await you. But one of the great things about that year is that Squires from 1983 were made at the Fujigen factory. That's right, that same factory that used to make all that kick-ass Japanese Fender stuff, the Ibanez stuff. I believe they also made some Jackson Charvel stuff. I might be wrong on that. They've made some other great stuff over the years too. They made all that killer Hartfield stuff that Fender put out for a while. And they made this. And I recently just acquired this. I'm really, really happy with how it plays. Not so happy with how it sounds though. I've got the Guitarmery guys coming up with something really, really cool that I'm gonna put in this, and more on that to come in the future. This is fun, Arnold. Question: is there any reason you don't own any hardware modelers? I know you like to use some of the plugins and whatnot, but never see you using any hardware. So this is a good question. I used to own a Kemper And I've had some minimal experience with the positive grid, bias head, and with an Axe effects, and a few other things here or there. The thing of it is I got to a point in my quest for tone where I really wanted to try a tube amp again. Ultimately, despite the fact that I love amp sims, and despite the fact that I honestly, legitimately believe that a Kemper gets you so goddamn close in terms of tone that a casual listener will not be able to tell the difference. Same with an Axe effects. Any casual listener that is listening to your recording, that is listening to your record, that is mixed well, is not going to be able to tell that it's a digital modeler versus a tube amp. And I'm still of the opinion that most people that say they can tell a difference are full of shit. But in my honest opinion, I just got to a point where I was tired of the tweakability. I was tired of having so much options with which to tweak the tone and not really finding something that I gelled with, if that makes any sense. Like, there was so much options for me to fuck with, and for whatever reason, I would get like partially there, like tweaking this knob or that parameter, and then I would start working on a different parameter and just lose all my progress. So it's the kind of thing where, yeah, chalk it up to inexperience and lack of knowledge. I wasn't exactly the best Kemper owner, and I don't exactly have the proper mindset or expertise to work with any of the other modelers. I'm also of the opinion too, like with my Kemper, it was the kind of thing where if you tweaked any of the profiles even a little teeny tiny bit, it altered the sound so dramatically that it was pointless. And to me, spending the money and getting really awesome quality profiles was where it was at. But that could be in and of itself kind of a costly measure. So not only do you have this $2,000 to $2,500 piece of hardware that you spend money on, but now you're spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on profile packs just trying to find the sound, or maybe the sounds, to really kind of encapture your playing. So yeah, I ended up getting rid of it. I just started getting a handful of tube amps that I love, and I'm just way happier plugging those things into the 2 Notes captor and then into 2 Notes wall of sound and getting, in my opinion, better results that way. At least better results for me as a player and as a fan of heavy music. Hey dude, I know you're more of a rhythm guy, but who are some of your favorite lead players? A lot of the name guys that you know and love. I love Nuno, I love John Petrucci, I love George Lynch. I love George Lynch, man. He's got some incredible tasty licks, and he's also got some unique ideas about playing leads, like over the different chords and everything. And I really have gained a lot from like watching his videos and learning from his instructional stuff that he's put out. Guys like Mike Amat, I like Gus G a lot. It's kind of funny, I don't really even necessarily go for guys these days who have a particular certain style. I just want someone who is going to blow my mind in terms of how it fits the music. That's why guys like Steve Lukather and Neil Sean are fucking timeless, is because, yeah, these are incredibly gifted musicians who can play circles around most of the big guys that we all know and love, but a lot of people don't talk about them like that because they're not specifically shred guys, which is unfortunate because we could learn a lot from guys like that. Opinions on blues boomers that only respect players with high-priced tube gear and custom guitars. So I definitely have an opinion on this, so rant incoming a little bit. First of all, the way that you worded your question, I'll be honest with you, man, it sounds like you've already made up your mind that there is an enemy out there, and this enemy are these, let's call them old guys, that play blues, that only like Fenders and Gibsons, occasionally might spend the extra money and get a PRS or something. They only play through Fender combos or whatever, and they have these negative opinions of other players. Here's what I'm gonna say seriously, is that if you look for an enemy, you're gonna find it. That's the reason why any sort of discrimination or like racism, sexism, hatred against people of a certain religious creed, homophobia. That's why this shit exists. It's because you're looking for an enemy. That enemy may not even have existed. You may have come up with a scenario in your head. And before anyone says something like, yes, I know there's the occasional asshole here or there that has a fucked up negative opinion, and you're gonna read that fucked up negative opinion on a Facebook comment or something, and all of a sudden you're gonna be like, hey, fuck those guys. When in fact, you're missing the entire point that that dude was an asshole. That person, that one individual said something shitty. And from there, that idea might actually spread, and yeah, it might impact somebody else to have the same opinion, or it might infect folks like you that all of a sudden you've developed a negative opinion versus that person because that person kind of played into a stereotype. So I don't have any issue with blues boomers. I think if you make the money and you want to spend that money on whatever piece of gear you want to spend your money on, that's fine. I think if you don't like the type of music I play, that's also fine. I don't have to like the type of music that you play either. What we need a lot more of is camaraderie. And what we need a lot less of is unnecessary, stupid, and unjustified conflict in music. Alright? Just because you don't like the music that I play doesn't mean that I'm some like trendy piece of shit like a few people have mentioned on my YouTube channel. I just like playing metal. I like playing chugs. I like spending my money on this kick-ass boutique gear and some not necessarily boutique gear that I tend to kind of accumulate. Whatever I like to do, I should be allowed to do. Whatever this person likes to do, they should be allowed to do it. So my advice out there, stop having a problem with people for no fucking reason. If someone's gonna say something to you or type something out in a comment that you're offended by, oh my god, this blues boomer called me an asshole because I like metal. Or hey, this metal guy called me a fucking trendy piece of shit because I like gender prog. You wanna know what your best response is? Mute that motherfucker, block that motherfucker, and move on. Talk to other people. It doesn't, and I'm not talking about just like slight disagreements, I'm talking about someone being a prick to you. Block that motherfucker, put that guy out of your fucking brain, and move the fuck on. Hey Arnold, I'm looking for a guitar with both an Evertune bridge and Fishman Fluence pickups. What do you think is the best guitar with those specs, except for the really high-end custom brands? Bear with me because I actually don't know a lot of companies that are putting out stuff like that. Like, I've done minimal research on it. The best thing I can tell you, LTD. LTD stuff, ESP E2 stuff. I think that company puts out an incredible amount of consistent quality instruments, and they've got a lot of instruments that have Evertunes and Fishmans, so I would just go that route. I'm sure at some point some other brands will start putting out some great stuff in the same price range. Worth it to check those out too, but I saw a few LTD models that were right around 1,000, give or take a little bit, that have an Evertune and that have Fishmans, and I think that's a fucking great price range for those instruments, and I think that given the quality of those instruments before you put those parts on there, I think that's a solid buy. And now that brings me to this week's Troll of the Week, because the guy whose question I just answered had a troll commenter. Thumbs up because you said, "Hey Arnold, fuck your question. Read the internet." Hey, fuck you, dude. And here's the reason why, alright? If you want to talk shit and be a little trolling internet asshole, you keep your fucking comments and your bullshit criticism directed at me because I am still on your level. But you keep away from my commenters, you keep away from my fans, you keep away from my viewers, you keep away from my subscribers because they are out of your motherfucking league. So with that, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to iFAQ number 20. I had a lot of fun with this. Thank you so very much. And as always, please remember, take what you do seriously, do not take yourself very seriously. There's lots more metal guitar oriented content to come.